The Assembly of First Nations has voted in favor of restarting negotiations with the federal government on a settlement for discrimination in the on-reserve child welfare system. The AFN had reached a $47.8 billion deal with Ottawa back in July, but yesterday the Chiefs voted to reject that deal. They say it didn't go far enough and that First Nations groups across the country were not properly consulted. The original agreement stemmed from a class action lawsuit and a 2016 ruling from the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal. It found that Canada discriminated against First Nations children and families by failing to provide them with the same level of child and family services that were provided elsewhere. Well, our next guest is an advocate that is supportive of the AFN's decision to reject the reform deal. Mary Teegee is the chair of Our Children, Our Way and executive director at Carrier Sakani Family Services. She joins us tonight from Prince George, British Columbia. Thanks for being here, Mary.
Thank you for having me.
So you support the AFN's decision to reject this deal with the feds. In your opinion, why didn't this go far enough?
Just to be very clear, it's the Assembly of Chiefs. It's the Chiefs that decided not to support this draft FSA. And really, it's because the fundamental structural flaws in the agreement. Yes, I understand it sounds like a lot, $47.8 billion, but that's projected over 10 years. And there are no guarantees that that money is going to be there next year and next year, because within the agreement, the $47.8 billion is subject to annual parliamentary appropriations. That means that any government that gets into power makes that decision on an annual basis. However, the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal ordered Canada to end discrimination and ensure it never happens again. Within that, right now, what we have is about $45 billion over 10 years that is Canada has to pay regardless of what government gets into power. So I also think one of the key flaws of this agreement was that it did not uphold the principle of free, prior, informed consent that is contemplated in the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People. And in fact, it is the Chiefs' decision to be well-informed and to consent to any type of agreement that's going to affect their children. And this agreement fell far short of that.
Okay, this is going to go back for renegotiation, possibly. Are you confident that a better deal can be struck? And also, what are you looking for in a new deal?
Well, let's look back at what happened with the compensation deal, the biggest deal and the biggest compensation settlement in Canadian history. Remember that the first offer was only about $5 billion, and we rejected that. It came to about $20 billion, and we rejected that. That sounds like it is a lot of money, but we had to reject it because not all the parties that were discriminated against were going to be receiving that compensation. So we went back to the table and we did better, and we ended up getting another 3.4. So that deal is 23.4. So lessons learned. This is the first offer, $47.8 billion. It's not so much as about the money. It's also about how do we protect the funding after year 10. Don't forget, this agreement is only for 10 years. What happens after year 10? Canada has not proven to be acting in good faith. We have taken Canada back to court since we won the 2016 ruling where Canada was ordered to end discrimination and ensure it never happens again. We've had to take Canada back to court 30 times, and we've won 30 times because the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal are the ones that said, Canada, this is what you must do. They also must ensure that there is systemic reform. This agreement was not strong on systemic reform for Canada. So I think when we're moving forward, the negotiations have to be transparent. We have to bring the best minds together. We have to bring, our children have to be involved in this, the matriarch. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. But there's also a lot of work that has been done.
I got to run here, but I do want to ask you about some of the criticism that we've been hearing from the community as well, because there are various opinions on this. Some believe that this is not a perfect deal, but it's a good offer. What do you make of that argument? And also the fact that some are saying, okay, you're negotiating with a Liberal government here who might not be in power after the next election. And there are concerns about possibly having to negotiate with a Conservative government.
We've negotiated with the Harper government. I don't think that is, those, of course, there are concerns. There's always a risk to whatever you do, but they're not like, there's nothing that we are doing that is going to jeopardize the well-being of our children, to be very clear. And we want to ensure that it's better to get this right now than have to deal with those systemic discrimination that would be caused by this final settlement agreement down the road. And so there is funding that is still flowing to the communities under the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal orders. It isn't either or, it's a yes and approach. So we're looking at ensuring that we're protecting the funding, we're ensuring that it does end discrimination, but more and more, that's so important, is that we're ensuring that discrimination doesn't happen again for another generation of young people.
Mary, appreciate your time tonight on an important topic. That is Mary Teegee, the chair of Our Children Our Way and executive director at Carrier Sekani Family Services, joining us from Prince George, British Columbia.